Elections impact way more than just policy. Who wins the 2024 race could change everything from the music you listen to what's on Netflix. From tax policy to abortion access to the Supreme Court, we all know that the 2024 election will have huge implications for the next 4 years and beyond.
We know this will be a tight race until the very end.
But it will also be about something much bigger. As cliched and tired as sentences like this are, how this election goes will represent a profound statement about who America is and set the tone for the next era of American politics. Let's break this into three main sections. First, American culture. Throughout history, presidential elections have been closely tied to broader cultural change, and a lot of past elections have shown this. One recent example is 2012. After the results came in that year, there was a fascinating Washington Post profile that followed a conservative Republican activist in Tennessee grappling with the results. Not just the re-election of Barack Obama, but also the first states to legalize recreational cannabis, and the first states to legalize same-sex marriage by referendum. Those results, combined with a historic amount of women, LGBTQ people, and people of color elected to federal office, combined to make the election that year a really bold marker of cultural change. Beth Cox was on the other side of that divide, a conservative, Christian, church-attending white Southerner, and she was despondent thinking about the implications of the results. What the heck happened to the country? Who are we becoming? She asked. And she was onto something. Whether you think it was good or bad, Obama's re-election had a big impact on our culture. During his second term, even as Republicans did quite well politically, the country saw seismic cultural shifts happen super rapidly. Polls found Americans become more accepting of premarital sex and drug use. Gay marriage was legalized nationwide. Transgender Americans covered major magazines. Abortion storylines returned to primetime network TV. Conversations about racism and bigotry evolved to be more overt and more pointed. Performances at award shows and Super Bowls that once would have garnered huge controversy became commonplace. Now, none of that was 100% because Obama won the election, but they were all downstream from the cultural change that his re-election signified, of a more cosmopolitan, urban, diverse, and liberal America getting voters' stamp of approval. And that's part of a broader pattern in American politics. Presidential elections can be a barometer of, a first indication of, or a confirmation of a shifting culture. In the 1980s, Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush's 12-year stretch in the presidency coincided with abstinence and just say no messaging across TV shows and media, and a backlash to feminist or overtly sexual music artistry.
That's why I would never ever take illegal drugs.
Bill Clinton's dominance in the 1990s signaled the return of Democrats' political relevance, and his pivot to the center helped spur a backlash to explicit lyrics in pop and rock music.
Finally, I say that we can ill afford to socialize our males with a mindset that violence perpetrated upon the female is acceptable.
The presidency of George Bush, who heavily relied on his Texas roots and cowboy image, overlapped with a cultural currency around country music and red state credibility. And now, there's reason to believe that whoever wins could have a huge impact on American culture in the coming years. For one, we already saw the impact of Donald Trump's presidency once.
But I want to say thank you to President Trump. Remember last year when it seemed like the Oscars were racist?
For another, the choice between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump is incredibly stark, and it's impossible to ignore how much gender and race are a part of that. If Trump runs in 3 elections, and the 2 victories he pulls out are both against women, that will probably have a big impact on both how Democrats think of female candidates and broader conceptions of what leaders can look like. If, on the other hand, this wild, tumultuous year ends in the election of the country's first woman president, a biracial child of immigrants whose life story, late-in-life marriage, no biological children of her own, defies all the long-standing conceptions of what women need to do to assuage voter concerns about them, it will permanently reset the way Americans think about leadership. Probably forever. Either way, it's easy to imagine someone coming out of this election really emboldened about their position in American culture. That leads us into the second section, how the Trump era ends.
I don't want to be rude. She's not competent.
While there's still always the chance that if he loses this year, Trump could run again in 2028, when he would be older than Joe Biden is now and would probably have more criminal convictions, most people agree that this is very likely the final election that Donald Trump will run in. And that means the stakes here are not just about policy or democracy, but history. How history remembers the man of Donald Trump and the era of politics he dominated. And here, it's worth remembering the old adage that history is written by the victors. Think about how different these two summaries are. 1. Donald Trump is elected president in 2016. Has a couple significant achievements, but remains largely unpopular. Is tossed out of office while handing full control of the federal government to Democrats 4 years later, returns to run again, and loses again, becoming the first major party nominee in US history to lose the popular vote 3 straight times, and paving the way for the country's first woman president. He served only 1 term, but was the first president to be impeached twice, saw more members of his own party vote to impeach him than any previous president, and ended his final campaign making history in a bad way. It's a kind of humiliating and defeated end to his story. Or 2. Donald Trump is elected president in 2016, has some significant achievements, but loses re-election because of the freak event of COVID, sees his successor become so deeply unpopular that he has to drop out of the race, and then defeats his successor's number 2 to become only the second former president to be sent back to the White House. Despite historic rebukes in his double impeachments and hatred from DC and cultural elites, American voters still wanted him back. He served 2 terms, more than the man who defeated him, and defied the odds bigly twice. A pretty clearly vindicating end to his story. Now, of course, these are oversimplifications. Of course, how history books write about any current leaders or political figures is far from our knowledge right now, and it depends a lot on the coming years. But you get the idea. How Trump's time in politics ends will mean a lot to how future Americans learn about him. And it will say a lot about how this era is remembered, recasting everything from congressional Republicans' lockstep loyalty to cringy Democratic overreach to the historic candidate swap this year. Was Trump a total fluke who was rejected by voters every time after 2016? Or was he proven right by history? Did Democrats pull off an epic feat that preserved their leader's legacy? Or did they pull off an anti-democratic switcheroo that failed to outflank Trump's populist energy? The answer to all of those is wrapped up in how this election goes. And it leads us to the final question. What will the next era of politics look like? For years now, the United States has been largely deadlocked between the parties. Every now and then, one gains full control of DC and can do some big things. But mostly, it's a time of unprecedented zigzagging. It wasn't so long ago that one party could go decades without losing control of a single chamber of Congress. In the 1960s and 70s, there was a 24-year stretch of neither chamber flipping at all. Meanwhile, over the past 24 years, the House and the Senate have flipped 9 times. That kind of volatility is largely because our national elections are just generally way closer than they used to be. In our last episode, go check it out, we talked about how we're currently on the longest stretch of single-digit margin presidential elections in US history. And while it's super unlikely that we'll break that this year, no one expects that either Trump or Harris is going to win in a double-digit landslide, the result could still mark the end of a certain post-Cold War era of politics. Already, Trump's candidacy has made history. He's only the 4th person in the history of the 2-party Republican-Democratic system to be nominated for president 3 times. He's also already the only president to lose the popular vote twice. And whether he wins the popular vote or not, according to most observers, it's unlikely, but not out of the question. Nearly everyone expects him to do better in the popular vote in 2024 than he did in 2020, which was itself already an improvement on 2016. So a larger and larger share of Americans voting for him, cycle after cycle, would be a triumph for his brand of politics, and a repudiation of Democrats, who have been arguing for years now that Americans should trust and like Trump less and less because of what they've seen, not more and more. And an outright victory by Trump would cement the direction of the Republican Party. Any hope your cable news watching parent has for the return of the Bush-era GOP, already unlikely no matter what, would be dead. You could count on the type of politics that Donald Trump exemplifies, pugnacious, populist, loose with facts and prejudices, would be here to stay. And that would probably also extend to Democrats. Last time, a Trump victory gave rise to a boom in all sorts of liberal-minded programming, streaming shows, books, you name it. And Democrats actually became more liberal during Trump's presidency. That probably would not happen again. You'd probably see companies continue to cut back on diversity initiatives, and congressional Democrats could very well cut a strict immigration deal with him. In other words, a Trump win could set the tone for the post-Trump era. He'd be gone, but both parties would have been bent towards his will. Or Not. A victory by Kamala Harris would also defy historical trends. Here's one way to think about it. Since World War II, only one person has been elected president to succeed a member of their own party, George H.W. Bush in 1988. So if Kamala Harris wins, she would be doing something that only one other person has done in nearly 90 years. A Harris win would also mark a new level of dominance for one party. Because of the way the population is distributed, a Harris Electoral College victory almost certainly means winning the popular vote. And that would also mean that Democrats have won the popular vote 5 elections in a row, tying the record for the most straight popular vote wins by a political party since the dawn of the modern two-party system. A Harris victory would also mean Democrats would have secured control of the presidency for 16 of the past 20 years, a dominance no party has enjoyed in decades. For years now, some Democrats have been predicting/hoping for the fever to break, for Republicans to abandon their turn towards hardline conservative populism. That did not happen after 2012 or 2020, and it very likely would not this time either, but a third straight Trump popular vote loss would give Democrats a dominance over the presidency unprecedented in modern history. And that would absolutely have an impact over where Republicans go next. So a Harris win would also define the post-Trump era, forcing a Republican reckoning over how to adapt to a country that has rejected it more times in a row than any party in over a century. So yes, this election is big. It will impact what kind of government we have over the next 4 years and what kind of policies come out of DC. But it has the potential to be much more. Happy voting. Election Day is just weeks away, and whether you're dreading it or excited for it, it has never been more important to stay informed and stay in the loop. Subscribe to see more stuff like this.